Hey everyone, welcome back to another exciting episode of Attack on Productions. Today I'm back being joined once again by both Jimmy and, like always, Fluff.
Yes, sir.
What up, people?
And as you can see, today's matchup is a little sideways. Well, it's kind of old school for us. I was out of town for the first round, and Fluff wasn't familiar with my setup. We've gone over it; he knows it now. But it is.
I should have been, but it wasn't. So deal with it.
Jimmy is playing Tricolor Lunch, bringing that back. Has there been any changes to it?
No, actually, there was 4 cards missing from the deck, and I couldn't remember, so I just grabbed 4 random cards from my box and threw them in there. So,
fair enough.
It's 4 cards different, but I cannot tell you what's different.
And so Matt is actually playing against you today. Matt, due to scheduling issues, could not be here for the recording. He's actually playing the Soul Striker skillless engine with the new 10-drop Gohan, which is something a lot of people have been mentioning. I've seen in the comments like, this is the leader you should play this with because you could tap all out doing stuff, reset your energy, yada, yada, yada. So like always, there's buttons. Feel free to click them. They're there for a reason. And let's go into the matchup. Jimmy, you played against 10-drop skillless engine before. Using launch, were you worried about anything going into this matchup?
Not a single thing. So I have played against the 10-drop Gohan. Bancroft has played it. I don't remember who else at the shop has played that. I think Fluffy played a variation of it.
I played a variation. I believe Trevor played a variation.
Mm-hmm. And I have played probably every other game on Untap has been a variation of the 10-drop Gohan deck. So like I'm so familiar with this setup. And so I was very familiar going into Matt's playstyle, and I was expecting the skillless to come out. I know how to play against the skillless. So it really just come down to a sequencing battle where Matt was going to have to sequence differently than I played against before. So we've talked about it a lot. Or go on, Becker. I'm sorry.
If I recall correctly, that card has a beautiful auto that goes against blue very nicely, right?
Yes, so if he restands a energy using a counter skill, I get to crit one of his lives and one of his energies. Which is crazy. Absurd.
Yeah.
Luckily, the Dimension Magic, the restand is a optional effect, so you can choose 0 cards to restand.
Yeah.
So you can still negate with it, but he just won't get the additional effect off of restanding the energy.
And this is such a good unison to go with this leader as well, because you need a unison of 3 to go ahead and just use its awaken, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this one has the draw capabilities and the ability with its -5 to boost the leader, make it double strike, and allow you to use negates by discarding 2 cards in your hand, which is always a great thing to do.
Yeah, this unison with this leader, it's like peanut butter and jelly. They just go together. Right, like they just work so well. They complement each other so incredibly well. It's completely worth it in every aspect.
Mm-hmm. So if you're not familiar with Launch, Launch is a very interesting leader in that it uses its battle cards to combo with. You get a draw when you combo with a card, and then if that card you combo with flips one of your life cards face up, you get to draw an additional card and then flip your leader over. So you're constantly flipping back and forth, which is not really seen in this game at all. Like the old Shinron decks, you would flip back to the front side, but that's only when you activated your big wish, which if you didn't win with that, you were going to lose the next turn, so you never really bothered with it. Or that was really never a gameplay strategy. But this deck is really interesting in that you draw a ton of cards and you're constantly flipping back and forth. So your opponent really never knows what power they're attacking into at any time, because your 5k certainly turns into 15k, and your 10ks can turn into, or your 10k leader can turn into a 5k the next turn. So your opponent can overextend on an attack that you are going to take 100%. And just waste cards trying to deal damage to your leader, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
Launch to me is kind of an anomaly in this game, where it was for a hot minute the the deck to beat in the format.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it was the deck that provided the most power. It had the most representation. And then the deck just fell off. It wasn't like it lost any power. There wasn't really anything that came out that was like a direct solution to launch. It was like people just stopped playing launch.
Mm-hmm.
But the deck is still absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, I think a lot of people were really into the idea of the aggro variant of the deck, where you would run cards to support getting your rivals on the field quickly and to deal as much damage as possible early on, which is kind of a smart strategy since you have such a fragile number on your front side of being 5k, 10k. But I play a very weird variation of this deck where I play a response style where I let my opponent play something and then I respond with my own cards. I use my rivals more as a protection than a aggression option.
Yeah,
which I think personally. Go on, I'm sorry.
I would say because there's technically 3 different ways you could have played launch when it first came out. Like you mentioned, there was the aggro route, which I'm correct was the red-green build. I played, because I like playing theme-based deck, I preferred the mid-range red route. But yeah, you played kind of like the long game control route.
Yeah, I commonly go to turn 6 to 7 with this deck. And also here, I'm just blowing up the skill list. I know what I'm looking for in to deal with the 10 drop, so I needed to get the skill list off field because I didn't want to deal with that. And Chomp Beerus is fantastic.
Starting off with the cooler, knowing that he would counterplay the arrival and going straight into the Beerus was a great play too, because it just KO'd it right away. Where he would have still had it if he did not counterplayed.
Yeah, which I could have just turned around and just played the Chomp Beerus back out anyway.
Yeah.
But I kind of wanted to get that into his head that I had the cooler in hand and force him to play around it later on in the game. I lost my train of thought when I was talking about the tricolor variant of the deck. But the deck is it's a very defensive deck. Your opponent has to really play through an entire wall to touch your life, which is fantastic. And you get so much value off of them attacking. Because everything in this deck happens during the battle phase. Very rarely am I tapping energy on my turn to play a card from my hand without using its own skill.
To me, it so perfectly supports Arrival because, you know, to run a good Arrival strategy, it has to be a deck that draws, and it has to be a deck that likes combos. So Launch just naturally fills that niche. And I think your approach to this leader is the 100% correct, accurate approach, because, you know, Arrival, the advantage to Arrival is the cheap bring in to do X thing, like 1 energy to put a double strike on. Most decks can do that, but a lot of decks can't respond by putting a 20k double strike on field that also blows up a card or also negs a card.
So I know some time has passed since our recording. Do you know what his mindset was for playing SSB? Did he just want 3 energy standing up, or he's just trying to guarantee
if I remember correctly, talking after the game, I think he said he thought he had another bean in hand and was going to restand his last energy to go into the 10-drop Gohan.
Gotcha. Okay. That would have been hurtful because you were tapped out.
Yeah, that could have just ended the game right there if he had that other Senzu bean.
Yeah, that's a very standard Matt move, where you can usually tell when Matt has some go for the throat approach, because he'll start seemingly, I don't want to call it overextending on his combos, but he'll start comboing heavy or utilizing more resources. And that's because he's seen an opportunity to go in on. And if he only had like a part of that go in, it just sucks a lot.
I've said it before, like, Matt is probably the most surprising player at the shop in terms of, I could literally think he's about to do nothing and pass, and then he drops a dual attack triple striker on me and wins the game. Like, there's been so many times where I'm sitting there and he's like looking at his hand, looking at his energy, and he's like, I can't do anything. And then he's like, oh, by the way, A-drop Gogeta. And I'm like, seriously, dude? Like,
yeah. Matt is one of the few people that you can feel safe in a game against, and then it just falls apart.
And I want to clarify real quick. We cannot see his drop, but he did discard 2 cards. I saw the reflection in the cards.
Yeah. So I tried to negate him with Violent Ray, which would have just saved me from this turn. It would have saved me from Baby Hatch, the Ape, everything. He had the Golden Avenger in hand, which I completely blanked at this point that he did a -5 on the Unison. So when he played that, I was like, oh, you don't have any energy. And he's like, oh, discard 2. I'm like, all right, well, now I have to find a different way to get out of this.
So you have 3 open energy. We've already seen him bounce a cooler to your hand. I gotta know what was Matt's mindset right here, because I feel like he pushed when he shouldn't have pushed. He has 2 attacks with that Gohan. If he would have left it where it was at, and you just did a normal combo, he would have just wasted cards in your hand.
So he knew I had 1 cooler in hand. I don't think he knew that I had all 4 of my coolers in my hand.
Yeah,
at this point in the game, and also 4 Senzu Bean. So I was able to neg both the Ape and the Gohan, play a second cooler, neg them again, Senzu Bean back up, tap, and neg them out. And that cost a lot of cards in my hand, but it also protected me from literally dying that turn.
Yeah.
And just to say, we missed the auto on cooler to mill a card, so the top 3 cards of his deck would not have ever touched his hand and went straight to the drop area. But I think it's inconsequential. The coolers did what they needed to do. I wasn't really worried about the mill.
And it was definitely unfortunate. Like I said, I would not have comboed off the Overrealm, and I would not have comboed off Hatch. I would have just pushed as heavy as I could with Gohan if I was going to push, and then have the Overrealm double strike crit, have the Hatch check as extra pressure afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Which I think at this point, I think Matt got kind of tilted at on the cooler play, because in any other matchup he would have had game there. I don't think any deck can get out of a triple strike that big.
Yellow with Final Flash, but that's about it, I think.
Yeah. So I think he was in the mindset of he's like, I 100% got game. I got 2 triple strike attacks. I got the Baby Ape. That's another triple strike. I got game at this point, and I still have a leader in Unison card swing. And then I paid 3 energy and completely wiped all of his options.
Yeah.
But, I've been in that situation against Launch where you feel safe and you go in on an attack, and then you dropped a Champa Beerus on me and killed after I went in on the battle card, and it's like, yep, I deserve to lose this one.
So this deck reminds me a lot of one of my favorite decks in this game, which is the set for Red Baby using the Draft Box Baby Leader. And a card in particular that I love, and it's still one of my favorite cards to this day, Revenge Final Flash, or Revenge Death Ball, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So Revenge Death Ball is buff your leader by 10k, and then neg one of your opponent's cards by 15. And that was when I found that card and I learned the ruling on the card that it negs on the base power and doesn't neg off with a combo, it just blew my mind. So I was like, oh, so they can swing with a 15k, combo their entire hand, I just pay 1 energy and just destroy it and not have to worry about it? And they're like, yeah.
Yep.
And that became one of my favorite cards in this entire game, and it still is one of my favorite cards. And this deck reminds me a lot of that, where I can allow my opponent to overextend and then just respond with 1 to 2 energy to negate everything that they've just done during the battle.
It's a feel bad moment.
Yeah. I know this sucks to play against, but I love playing this type of deck.
It's one of those decks that really force you to use a different brain than against other decks, because you have to worry about what's on the field, but then also what could be in the hand. And if I'm Matt and I have something to do after this, seeing 3 coolers on the field has got to, at least from the aspect of combo step make me feel a little safer.
Mm-hmm.
But you still have to worry about Majin Buu. You still have to worry about
Gogeta's Champabiris.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, there really is no such thing as safe against this.
yeah, and I would like to comment that I forgot to warp the launch when I activated Battle from the drop area, so that's why I put the launch in the warp when I did.
I think you do it like twice or something.
Yeah, I probably do. That's such a hard. I don't know why, but that's so hard for me to remember every time I combo with the launch from the drop area. I always catch it before I'm about to combo with her, and I'm like, oh, I can't do that. Never mind. Just go straight to the warp. My bad.
And just to make sure we're not, discrediting Matt for any reason here.
Oh no.
Look at how far in the game we are, despite the fact that you have multiple double strikers. You just blew up a ton of investment on his side of the field, and he's still hanging in there.
So
Blue standing on multiple open energy with 3 life is still really hard to get through.
Mm-hmm.
So we're entering a part of the game where Matt has just declared pass turn and realized he could have continued his play and wiped your whole board. Now, granted, Matt would have been tapped out if he did that. But if he had Dimension Magic, he would have been able to protect himself a little bit longer by resending energy and going on from there. But I think I know why, actually, looking back at it. He could not attack with the 10 drop. So I'm assuming what occurred there is that he knew he couldn't attack with it, so why put it out on the board risking it getting hit? So he played the blocker to get rid of your if you combo a card, if you counter with a card and you reset energy, get rid of that. Now he's protected. Then he realized, oh, I could have wiped your board. That's why the whole camera shifted. He got really upset at that, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Oh. And I mean, like, that happens. Like, you realize plays that you could have made, and usually it ends up happening in these recordings, which is why I encourage people watching this to, record your friendlies, record your games at the shop, and then watch them back later on to find your mistakes. But that was like a live of him realizing, oh, I could have made this play and changed the course of the game.
Yep.
Which, looking back on it, we don't think it really changed much.
It's hard to tell, really. It really is hard to tell.
Yeah,
but
if he had done it and then cleared your field, look at the number of attacks that he would have been able to stop. And having Launch as a leader that has to get a battle through to start gaining field advantage, if he negates your launch swing, then you have to tap energy to put a battle card on the field to be able to get your reactions off. Or to get pressure on that turn. So even just playing the Gohan, just activating the effect and letting it clear the field, and then maybe just passing is not a terrible thing.
Yeah. And I think, like, even during... This was round 2, I think. Speaking of just misplays that happened, I was all day at a Renaissance Festival. I got here pretty late. Unfortunately, I missed the first round. And I came myself in the back row going, I did not mean to combo that card. Like, I did it during tonight's event. I comboed a card off, and I was like, I shouldn't have done that. And I knew that lost me the game. It happens. So,
and to comment there, that Gogeta's swing is 15k, and he comboed off 2 cards. He comboed off the skillless from the field, and then the 1 card from his hand.
Yeah,
he didn't have to do that to get out of it, but I think that was tilted brain.
I think he was thinking it was the other Gogeta.
Yeah, that is a possibility as well. So in my hand currently, I have 1 launch, the cooler I picked up off of Hercule Boo, and then
a Whis.
A Whis negate, the Whis' coercion.
Yep.
Which I got a lot of flack for playing that card in this list, but like that card is clutch. Like,
yeah, that card's really good. I mean,
like it's fantastic. Like, it's basically just a D magic if your leader card's not blue. Like,
it just doesn't see play in blue decks because they got the upgraded D magic. But if you're not playing a blue leader, why not?
So this is...
I love...
I don't know, and both me and Jimmy looked over the footage beforehand, if he ever got rid of that 10-drop Gohan. We didn't actually see when it occurred, if he did. So this is going to be a really interesting turn. I'll put that up front already. He brings up the Unison, and for me looking back on it, it was kind of like, okay, he's gonna use the spirit boost mechanic because doesn't have like a +1 or -1 to play a skills from your energy.
It's a +1 to play a skills from your energy.
Yeah. Do you have to? Do you replace that card that you put there with that unison, or is it just when the Bardock's played?
Yes, but it's at the end of the turn.
Okay. I wasn't sure. So that's where I thought he was kind of going with this turn. And I was a little thrown off when I was watching this kind of occur. I was like, if he had the 10-drop in his hand, he could have just played the skills right away, gone straight into the 10-drop, and swung, forcing Jimmy to negate. But I'm not seeing this. So right now, he's just giving Jimmy resources from what I can see.
Yeah, this is just not the way. And again, not tearing Matt down, because Matt's a fantastic player. But this is just not how you handle launch. And I've lost to launch because of shit like this.
Yeah.
Where you're just trying to put pressure like you would against any other leader. But this is the area that launch wants to be. Launch wants to be in the combo step where it's going to advantage. It wants you to have a 20, 15,000 on the field that it's just going to be able to arrival and pop and basically make you waste your momentum.
Yeah. And maybe that's what happened here. Maybe he did, and you saw it in his drop. I'm not sure. But what he was trying to do the entire time, because he was trying to bait you to do a negate early, is what he was trying to do. He had another golden Avenger in his hand, and because you weren't negating, if I recall correctly, all right, let's see your negate. And he taps the 5 energy, if I'm correct, plays a golden Avenger, and you're just like, yeah, it's right here. Which, for him, that was game for him. Like, he couldn't stop anymore from that happening. But I guess he got rid of it, and I just didn't know when it occurred. I looked for the footage to see what happened to that 10-drop.
So I know we didn't see it in the footage, but I remember after the game, I think we were talking that he did not have the card in hand because the discussion come down to playing the baby unison instead. And just swing with baby unison, then minusing 5, or paying 5, swinging, then minusing 5 off of it to get the...
You know what it probably was now I'm thinking of it? When he super comboed, he probably didn't have a way of putting his skills on board, so he bottom decked the 10-drop, drew 2 cards, and drew into that unison.
Yeah, that's most likely what happened, because I remember after the match, he did not have the card in hand.
That's unfortunate. Yeah, because like what
that happens.
Yeah, it does. And I think what Tanner was mentioning was he could have paid the 5 for the other unison, swung -5, give the leader double strike plus 15k, and now he discards 2 cards to play the baby, and then you're forced to combo out a double strike or negate it, and then risk the baby dropping afterwards.
Exactly.
So, but I mean,
and if had he waited and then like Jimmy decides to arrival at some point, he could have counterplayed with the 8 for free as well.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, there were definitely plays there. And that's just, launch is one of those that forces you to sequence incorrect. It forces you to sequence in a way that isn't necessarily advantageous, the best play for you. Mm-hmm. Like, it's not the most energy efficient, not the most draw efficient, but it is the most efficient from the sense of it reduces the number of arrival and combo opportunities for launch. And that's just how you have to approach this game. And it's really a matchup that you just have to practice. It's a very, if you're not familiar with the launch strategy, it's very difficult to play against, like, just off the cuff unless you're familiar against it. And I'm sitting here talking a big game, but it's a hard match to play.
Yeah. And with that being said, Jimmy, thank you for joining us today. Like always, people, there's buttons. They're there. Click them. And while Fluff does the outro, there's more stuff on the screen for you to click as well. Check those out.
Hey, if there's anything you guys want to see us do, let us know in the comments below. But I'll just leave you off on this. As always, read your cards, know your plays. Let us make the mistakes so that you don't have to, and Fluff out.